Yo. What is up, y'all? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to another edition of Rob's Best Bets. And in this episode, we are once again talking about college football, baby. Here in Week 13. Week 13, the season is pretty much over in terms of the regular season. Only a couple games left for most of these teams. These teams obviously are going to have, the Army-Navy game. There's also going to be Conference Championship Week, but the bulk of the season is behind us. And in this video, we have a number of picks here in Week 13, and we also have an update for our futures. So let's go ahead and jump into that real fast here, because as you guys remember on this channel, at the start of the season, we placed a host of futures. We placed some unders on win totals. We placed some overs on win totals. We placed some futures on to make the college football playoff that are looking very strong with, Georgia Tech and Texas A&M. And then we also had some Heisman futures, and notably, that's what I really want to focus on here, because yes, we're already up 2.03 units in this market, 3-2 in total in terms of the total futures that have already cashed or lost. But when you're looking at the Heisman futures, we have a 1 unit future on Marcel Reed plus 5,000. That's to pay 50 units. 50 units. And at this point, it's a 3-horse race in the Heisman Trophy. And Marcel Reed, as we kind of thought could be the case with Texas A&M having a dream season, he is right there in the mix. And it's him, Fernando Mendoza, and Julian Sayin. And after Marcel Reed's performance in the second half against South Carolina last week, I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to go ahead and hedge out of some of that 50-unit potential payout. And so if you did place those future bets alongside me here, this is only for you. This is catering to a very niche group, of my followers who join me on these bets. But if you did, here is my strategy in kind of moving forward with the Heisman race. And we're going to go ahead and place a 6-unit future bet on Fernando Mendoza to win the Heisman Trophy. And this would pay 5.71 units. And we are also going to place a 5-unit wager on Julian Sayin to win the Heisman Trophy at plus 180 to potentially pay out 9 units. And ideally, Julian Sayin cashes or Marcel Reed cashes on this Heisman Trophy. We're going to be very anti-Fernando Mendoza, but if Fernando Mendoza does end up winning this award, we kind of break even. We end up suffering a little bit of a net loss, about 0.29 units, but we're talking about an upside potentially of 39 units on Marcel Reed. We have a lot of equity to play with when we have 50 units out kind of lingering, and so chewing into that with just placing 11 units on the other 2 horses in a 3-man race, it just makes too much sense. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do in terms of our hedge there. For Georgia Tech to make the college football playoff at plus 750, I'm not hedging. I'm not hedging any other futures. We're going to let those ride, but I wanted to kind of clue you guys in on what I'm doing there, because that is such a sizable future for us, and I know a lot of you guys tailed alongside me on that one. But with all that being said, y'all, I'm very excited to jump into these Week 13 picks. But first, we do need to take a second to shout out today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. And if you haven't already signed up using promo code ROBDFB, I highly recommend you guys do so. But with all that being said, y'all, let's go ahead and jump into this full week slate of games here in the college football world. All right, first up, we are taking a look at a Wednesday MAC matchup here between Miami of Ohio and Buffalo. And the big news, and obviously DeQuan Finn, the quarterback for Miami, Ohio, did not play last time out against Toledo. That was one of our angles in backing Toledo. But when you're looking at this matchup here, no DeQuan Finn again. Miami of Ohio's offense looked horrific without him at the helm. And Buffalo, they've been an up and down team this year, certainly, but they are right back in that mix to potentially go 6-6, 7-5. have a chance to really have a nice end of the season. And with them being at home here, chasing that bowl eligibility, I do think they end up winning this outright. But let's go ahead and take the 1.5 point buffer here for 2 units for our first bet here on Wednesday. For pick number 2, we are heading out to Friday's slate, where we have an ACC matchup here between Florida State and NC State. And this is a very interesting matchup because NC State last time out just got punked. But Florida State on the other side has been a, holy cow, a whole roller coaster all season long. And even still, you know, both of these teams have things to fight for at the back end of this season. But NC State at home in this matchup has a really good chance to clinch that bowl eligibility. And I do feel like when you still have a young team and a head coach who I think honestly is fighting for his job at this point, they are going to put their best foot forward. And because of Florida State, because of how they have looked at their peak this season, I think a lot of that factors into this number being at a straight 5 line. But I think NC State is going to have a chance to win this thing outright, if not cover that +5. So let's go ahead and take the 5 points here with the Wolfpack for 2 units for our second bet here in Week 13. For pick number 3, we are taking a look at another ACC matchup here on Saturday at noon Eastern time. And this matchup is between Miami and Virginia Tech. And obviously, with Virginia Tech, they made some major headlines by hiring James Franklin earlier this week. And I do think that brings the most out of a fan base, out of a program, out of players who are going to potentially return back to school to play under James Franklin. And this is that last home hurrah, right? This is senior day. This means a lot to a lot of players that are on that roster who have stuck it out during some of the bad times that this program has experienced. And Miami, I get it. They brought the sledgehammer last week against NC State, and they are competing to get into the college football playoff, but nobody in this sport is a bigger choker than Mario Cristobal, is honestly how it kind of feels. And 17.5 points, I do think that Miami could certainly cover this line, but I think also Virginia Tech, on the totally inverse style of ball game, could win this thing outright. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and we take Virginia Tech catching the 17.5 points for 3 units. And for an additional full unit, let's go ahead and take the Hokies on the first half money line here as well. For pick number 4, we are taking a look at a Big Ten matchup here between Minnesota and Northwestern. And every single year when we see this matchup, I always love taking the under. It's just 2 teams that from a stylistic standpoint really kind of lend themselves to bringing this thing into the mud. And of course, obviously in November, when you're talking about Evanston or the Chicago area, it's not going to be the most pleasant temperatures. And I do feel like in this game, we are once again going to see an efficient clock consistently moving and 2 defenses that are kind of making it their day. And the total in this game is at 40.5. And I love, again, taking that under for 3 units for our fourth bet here in Week 13. For pick number 5, we are taking a look at another senior day spot here between Old Dominion and Georgia Southern. And the Todd Helton tenure at Georgia Southern hasn't gone to plan, but they can still somehow salvage this season. And Old Dominion on the other side, they've been playing very, very good ball all season long. It's almost intimidating to get in front of them right now at this point with a Georgia Southern defense in particular that has been getting bludgeoned by a number of Sun Belt teams. But I do feel like if there's any sort of last-second hurrah play-up spot with Georgia Southern this year, it's going to come in this game against a big-time rival. And when you're looking at the spread of catching 12.5 points, for me, that was enough of a buffer to go ahead and say, hey, give me those points for 2 units for our 5th bet here in Week 13. For pick number 6, we are heading down to the Big 12, where we have a matchup here between Baylor and Arizona. And Baylor under Dave Aranda, this tenure has been a failure. There's no other way to put it, because Dave Aranda was brought in to be sort of a defensive guru of sorts, sort of like a Matt Rule in a way. And when you are looking at how this tenure has played out, that's the one side of the ball that they never show up on. They do not play defense whatsoever. And now Baylor has kind of found themselves in a spot where they may miss out on bowl eligibility in a year where a lot of people were taking them to win the whole Big 12. And Arizona on the other side, I think, has actually been playing a lot of really good ball all season long. I think they're the better team in this matchup. I think they're laying a reasonable number of 6.5 points. And for all of those reasons above, I say we go ahead and we lay the 6.5 points here for 2 units for our 6th bet here in Week 13. For pick number 7, we are taking a look at a very fun, it's kind of weird to call this a G5 matchup, but that's kind of what it is, I guess, at this point. But this is Wazzu taking on James Madison. And obviously with Washington State, they've been going the Indy route this season because of just the conference realignment that kind of left them out stranded. But they've been playing a lot of competitive games. They've also gotten blown out on occasion as well, which I'm certainly not overlooking here. But James Madison on the other side is sort of in a driver's seat of sorts to get into the college football playoff as the G5 auto bid. They have a very strong case as it currently stands. They just got to handle business the rest of the way. But when you're a G5 team and a program like James Madison, and you have these expectations now in front of you, these real, hanging, lofty goals that coming into the season you dreamed of, they are right in front of you. You can make them come to fruition. How does that affect your team down the stretch of a season? Some teams truly cave under that level of pressure, and I don't know what to say about James Madison in this spot, but what I do say is 13.5 points, when you're taking on that type of pressure, is a lot to lay. That's a comfortable win. Wazzu is not a pushover kind of team, and I do feel like there's even a chance that Wazzu wins this thing outright. But because of the range of outcomes in this game, I say we just go ahead. We take the 13.5 points for 2 units for our 7th bet here in Week 13. For pick number 8, we are taking a look at a matchup here between Syracuse and Notre Dame. And we were on Notre Dame last week against Pitt. They made that thing look easy. That was never a ball game. Pitt was just not on their level, even at home. And a lot of people might be, afraid to bet against a Notre Dame team who seemingly is just red hot, playing some of the best football in the entire sport right now. And I certainly understand that. But the level of respect between Fran Brown and Marcus Freeman in this game is so darn notable that I think at some point the dogs may get called off. Notre Dame has a point to prove, but Syracuse is a team that can slow down the game. And although I don't think Notre Dame is going to be looking to, not score early in the game and rack up some early points, 35 and the hook. The hook isn't the important factor here. I think that's going to be coming into play late when Syracuse is fighting. They're playing good defense. They're slowing down the game. They're limiting offensive possessions from Notre Dame. And although I think Syracuse is not going to be any sort of match in terms of, the competitive actual aspect of the game, I think 35.5 points is maybe just that half point too high. And for that reason, I say we go ahead and we take the points here with Syracuse for 3 units for our 8th bet here in Week 13. For pick number 9, we are taking a look at a matchup here between Arkansas and Texas. And Texas just got their hearts broken. Their season's pretty much over in terms of the expectations that they had coming into the year of making the college football playoff, of being potentially the best team in the sport. that is not even going to come close to coming to fruition. Heck, I think Texas has another loss under their belt before this season comes to hold, if not two. And I say if not two because Arkansas, at this very ugly win-loss record, is a very competitive team, game in, game out. And I get it. Laying a 9.5 with a pissed-off Texas team kind of feels like a play in most spots, but this is not a good Texas team. And that ugly offense that we've made note of time and time again, well, it reared its ugly head yet again last week against a Georgia defense that honestly hasn't been that impressive this year. And although Texas's defense is somewhat respectable, I think Bobby Petrino is going to go out on his sword this season, and Arkansas has the firepower to really be an annoyance down the stretch. And for that reason, I say we go ahead. We take the 9.5 points here for 4 units for our 9th bet here in Week 13. All right, next up, we are taking a look at a very fun G5 matchup here between Tulane and Temple. Man, Tulane has a ton to play for, and I think they're going to be coming out guns a-blazing in this game where, Temple has been fantastic, but their home crowd every single time they play at home has flat out not been impressive. And I do think that a couple things are true when you're talking about sort of a desolate home environment. And I think the big thing that comes to mind is the road team, whether it be Tulane, whether it be Navy, whoever it is, they're going to be able to play a little bit more free and loose. They're going to be able to make checks at the line of scrimmage. They're going to be able to communicate from the sidelines to the field efficiently, clearly, and Tulane is a very, very good offense. Their defense has been shaky at times this season, but that offense has seemingly performed game in and game out, and Temple in this matchup, very similarly. Their defense has been the downfall this season, but the offense has been absolutely awesome. And when you're looking at a total here of 56.5, yeah, it's a tick a little bit higher than most normal totals, but I think it's justifiable, and honestly, I don't think it's high enough. I think this game is played in the 60s, and for that reason, I say we go ahead and we take the over here of 56.5 points for 2 units here in Week 13. All right, for our second to last bet here in Week 13, we are heading out to one of my favorite games of the weekend. It's a rivalry matchup in this game between Tennessee and Florida. And obviously Florida, they're just playing spoiler down the stretch. Tennessee, they're not really playing for much at all either because their college football playoff chances are pretty much dashed with how the rest of the SEC is performing and with how there's so many Big 12 teams in the mix. There's so many ACC teams in the mix. There are so many teams in the Big 10 in the mix that a 3-loss team just does not feel viable anymore at this point, especially a team like a Tennessee that is kind of voided of a lot of those big wins. And when you are looking at this matchup here, I do think that sort of scenario weighs on the minds of the Tennessee Vols heading into enemy territory. And Florida, they're just looking for that ultimate high to end the season, and I do think that they end up winning this game outright, and they're catching 4.5 points. I say we take them for 4 units for our second to last bet here in Week 13. All right, for our final bet here in Week 13, we are heading out to San Diego, California, where we have a matchup here between San Jose State and the San Diego State Aztecs. And when you're looking at San Diego State, they are coming off of that massive win over Boise State at home last time out. And although Boise State is kind of in a down year for the program, it's still a monumental win to get over that hump against a traditional power in the Mountain West. And when you're looking at this matchup here, I do think that there's one, a hangover factor at play, and 2, on the other side for San Jose State, this is potentially the last chance that San Jose State is going to have a chance to play up to competition to close out this season. And although I think they end up losing this game, I don't think they're going to be going down lightly because this offense is very good. They had a bad week last time out, and I do think that they end up playing extremely hard for Ken Niumatalolo to round out this season, and for that reason, I say we go ahead. We take the 12.5 points for 2 units for our final bet here in Week 13. All that being said, I really want to thank you guys for checking out today's video, and if you do want to show some love on this video, make sure you drop a like on the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you guys comment down below. But with all that being said, y'all, I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.